to the first example. Synonyms seem to relieve monotony for the reader. For example, the Zohar uses 6 different verbs to express tremble. In the first 2 lines of tremble, you'll see in bold a transliteration of the Aramaic. So you have Zua, Zazeh, Yachal, Ragash, Ratat, and Ra'ash. Those are the 6 verbs the Zohar uses. It uses 6 different nouns for donkey. 2 of these are loanwords from Hebrew. It draws on 3 verbs for sea. Putting these together, I've noticed that the Zohar uses its synonyms as part of its style. One aspect of that is alliteration, which is repetition of the consonant sounds, either in adjacent words or syllables. So in our first example, Sichon, the ass of the desert, or in Aramaic, Sichon Sachad Madara. Now, the background of Sichon is he was the king of the Amorites. The Israelites wanted to pass through his land on the way to Canaan, and he said no, and being a jerk, went out to fight them. Well, almost 1,200 years later, almost 2,000 years later, that offense hasn't been forgotten because there's no statute of limitations for Jewish collective memory. So when his name comes up in the Zohar, they just have to take a poke at him. The second thing to remember is that apparently at this time, calling someone a donkey is a big insult. So his name comes up, Sichon, they have to say he was Saicha of the desert, an ass of the desert. And you get alliteration in the first 2 words, the S sibilant, Sichon, and then that hard H, like the CH in Lochnes. Pritzker does a nice job of bringing this out by using the word ass rather than donkey. A second thing I've noticed is alliteration and rhyming. When I came to this sentence in the Zohar, I remember laughing out loud and just thinking, oh, well done, Zohar. So the sentence in English, Father did not see a donkey without driving it from behind. It's those first 4 words where you get the rhyme. The Abba, La Chama Chama. The verb, Hame, we saw in C. He had 3 verbs to choose from for C and chose the one that begins with a hard H, then an M. Then he went to the word for donkey, checked his thesaurus, found the one word that both rhymed with Hama and has alliteration, hard H and an M, the La Hama Hama. It's very subtle what the Zohar does with its Aramaic, but I just say I've fallen in love with it. Now, this may be the most important experience I've taken away from these past 5.5 years. Pay attention to your emotional reactions so that when I said I laughed, that's one reaction you can have with the text. Sometimes you'll be bored. Sometimes you might want to roll your eyes. I do this a lot when the Zohar starts banging on about the Mark of the Covenant or the corona, the marvels of the corona. And sometimes you may notice a pang, a little twinge. That is probably the most important feeling you could have. So I'd just like to suggest, write down, get a little notebook and write down the line that evokes that emotion. It's as brief as a flicker when you experience it. Take that line that you've written down and bring it to your daily meditation. This is what I think is everyday mysticism. And in a work that's a classic of Western spirituality like the Zohar, you would expect these quiet, powerful experiences. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judy. Wonderful insight, and I appreciate all that you've done to enable us to complete this cycle and to enlighten us about the unique style of the Aramaic. I'm going to call now on Rabbi Eli Spitz. He's a rabbi of Congregation B'nai Israel in Tustin, California, and he's one of the founders of Zohar Ammud Yomi, and he'll give us some reflections on completing this cycle of studying Zohar. Eli, please.
I want to thank Judy Barrett for her words leading us off, and to say, Judy, that I have been able to get through the terrain of the Zohar in much part because of you and others, but you're creating a calendar. That calendar motivated me and kept me on track. I share a few thoughts on what I've gained from my trek across the Zohar these last 5.5 years. And I do so aware that I am a visitor with a strong emotional attachment, but without a quality of expertise when I enter into the Zohar. I am a serious student of Torah, having studied Talmud and Midrash and reading the text every week, but the Zohar was in many ways new terrain, and I could only have crossed what I call Zohar land because of the translation that I am so indebted to Danny and Joel and Nathan for, and Art's introduction. So what did I gain from traveling across the Zohar? The first is a greater awareness that for the Zohar, God is on a love quest. And any student of Zohar, any student of Torah, is likewise engaged in seeking a quality of unity that is a little hard to find. I love the fact that the introduction to the Zohar in the beginning starts with words from Shir HaShirim 2:2, Keshoshana ben ha'chochim, ken ra'yati ben ha'banot. Translated in the Pritzker edition, like a rose among thorns, so is my beloved among the maidens. Clearly, the Zohar is a love story, a quest for Tiferet and Shekhinah to be reunited, but more, those sphirot to all be brought together in balance. With that as a template, somewhat new for me, that of the sphirot as the lens of reading the Zohar, the second thing that I gained was a sense of how creatively the Torah can be understood as a story of that quest for God, for both expressing love through creation, but also reuniting. For instance, at the beginning of the Guf HaZohar, 1:15a, there is the unpacking of just those 3 words that begin the Torah, Bereshit, Bara, Elohim. I was aware of the nuance of every letter. I was aware that the King James translates it, in the beginning God created, and that the bet in the JPS and the Jewish Publication Society shifts it to when God began to create, aware that the bet is variable in its interpretation, as is the word Reshit. But I loved the introduction to Zohar and its unpacking of those 3 words. And I will add, remarkably, in the Pritzker edition, it's only a few sentences and 1 footnote, which is only, again, an illustration of how much the Zohar conveys to a traveler. Bereshit, with Reshit, understood as Chachma, like in Psalms. Reshit, Chachma, Yirat Hashem, that it is with Torah. I knew the Midrash that God used the Torah as Reshit, as the beginning of Chachma, of wisdom, as the blueprint for how to create. But the marvel of this interpretation is that what is created is Bereshit, with the use of Chachma, the nameless. It's elliptical. Bara creates Elohim, creates Bina, so that God, Elohim, becomes that which gets created rather than necessarily the source of creation, and that the source of creation is unnamed, unnameable, Ein Sof, that which is infinite. And so this awareness of how the Zohar can hyperliterally read the text and give me a new awareness, both of how creatively Torah can be read, but more how behind Torah there can be the nameless, and that the Torah can be a description of that unfolding, is what draws me into the terrain of Zohar as another way for me to gain connectedness to the quest for my own wholeness and finding in Torah wisdom. I will add that I loved how for the rabbis, the Chavarya, their own excitement for finding these new insights, their hugs, their tears, their ability to find these insights through a child or through an old man gave me, again, as a traveler, a sense to be more attentive to who I listen to and what wisdom is to be gained. But I will add, as a traveler, as somebody who trekked across this land of Zohar land, that there were also things that bothered me. It bothered me, as a person living in this moment, that this is clearly a story by men, largely for men, as it's composed. It bothered me that women have a secondary role. It bothered me that non-Jews are often dealt with as far below the spiritual level of Jews, and that the world was created for Jews. And in that regard, I am grateful for the commentary that's written with modern lenses to say even the greatest insights are often filtered through people living in a particular time and place. And so I'm pulling this together to say, I've had the privilege to travel these last 5.5 years across Zohar land. I do so knowing that there are many layers and experiences that the Zohar could evoke that warrant many more visits. I do so before those who I see before me on the screen as much more expert as my guides in allowing me to have so traversed. I conclude with saying that I know that the Zohar beckons, and that I am by no means deeply expert by any means in the Zohar, but by my having traveled the Zohar, I now do serve as a guide for others into this world of imagination, into this world of exploration, dachazeh, come and see. And I want to conclude with 2 paragraphs and then a prayer from the Zohar. Sava de Mishpatim 299. Once he has grown accustomed to her, she reveals herself to him face to face and tells him all her hidden secrets and all the hidden ways concealed in her heart since primordial days. Then he is a complete man, husband of Torah, master of the house. For all her secrets she has revealed to him, concealing nothing. She says to him, do you see the hinting word with which I beckoned you at first? These are the secrets. This is what it is. Then he sees that one should not add to these words or diminish them. The pshat of the verse, just like it is, one should not add or delete even a single letter. So human beings must be alert, pursuing Torah to become her lover, as has been said. And now last, from Kavamidah, one who knows and gazes, happy is his lot in this world and the world that is coming. For this principle will keep a person's legs steady for the sake of entering behind the curtain and walking on the straight path. Happy is he in this world, and happy is he in the world that is coming. Ribono Shel Olam, I conclude with a prayer. Feeling the privilege of having crossed this land of the Zohar and having encountered so many who are now indelibly written into my imagination, new ways of seeing the familiar, new ways of knowing that you are simultaneously hidden and revealed, simultaneously one and many. May I return to Zohar, and may I return to Torah, knowing that Torah is both inviting as a lover and mysterious as a lover too. May that quest lead me toward greater presence of your presence. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Ellie. Wonderful. I'm going to teach a passage now from volume 2 of the Zohar Pritzker edition. It's a passage where 3 messengers appear to Abraham and Sarah and announce the upcoming birth of Isaac. And the verse the Zohar is focusing on, it's not here in the text, but the Zohar will conclude with it, is V'sara shoma'at petach ha'ohel. Sarah heard from the opening of the tent. So the theme is openings and gates, and that's how Rabbi Yehuda begins with a verse from Proverbs, from Mishlei, also about gates. This is from the famous chapter known as Eshet Chayil, and we're beginning there. Rabbi Yehuda opened. Her husband is known in the gates as he sits among the elders of the land. Okay, this verse is describing the husband of the Eshet Chayil, the husband of the woman of valor, the ideal Jewish woman. And this one verse in the chapter talks about her husband. Her husband is well known. It really means he's well known downtown. He's known in the gates of the city as he sits among the elders. He's an honored, respected member of the community, the husband of Eshet Chayil. But in the Zohar, the Eshet Chayil is Shekhinah. She is the divine woman, the divine feminine, the divine female. And her husband, we would say, is Tiferet, although in this passage there's really some elasticity or some intentional confusion about the husband. The husband of Shekhinah is Tiferet, but we'll see that in a way it's simply God as transcendent, extending all the way to Ein Sof. So the husband is the transcendent aspect of the divine, and Shekhinah is the divine feminine. Rabbi Yehuda opened. Her husband is known in the gates as he sits among the elders of the land. Come and see. The Blessed Holy One has ascended in glory. He is hidden, concealed in utmost loftiness. There is no one in the world, nor since the day the world was created has there ever been, who can comprehend his wisdom or apprehend him. For he is hidden, concealed, transcendent, beyond. Okay, the transcendent or Ein Sof, let's say the ultimate reality of God, is incomprehensible. All beings above and below cannot grasp, till finally they declare, blessed be the glory of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh from his place. Baruch Kavod Adonai Mimkomo. Those below proclaim that he is above, as is written, your glory is above the heavens. Those above proclaim that he is below, as is written, your glory is over all the earth. Finally, all of them, above and below, declare, Baruch Kavod Adonai Mimkomo. Blessed be the glory of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh from his place, for he is unknowable. No one has ever been able to comprehend him. Yet you say her husband is known in the gates? There's a little bit of Zoharic humor here, I think. The scene here is really the angels above, all beings above and below. The beings above are the angels. The beings below are us, humanity. Nobody really can pinpoint God. Nobody can define God. Nobody can locate God exactly. So those on earth say, well, he must be up there. Your glory is above the heavens. And the angels also cannot really locate God. They figure God must be on earth. Your glory is over all the earth. So finally, all of them are forced to declare, blessed be the glory of God from his place, really meaning wherever he is. We can't find God. Even the angels can't find God, so may God be blessed wherever he is. But if God is unknowable, if this transcendent aspect of God is unknowable, how can the verse in Proverbs say her husband is known in the gates? Okay, the husband of Shekhinah, the transcendent aspect of God, whether it be Tiferet or Ein Sof, the transcendent dimension of God cannot be known. So how can the verse say that her husband is known? But indeed, her husband is known in the gates, the blessed Holy One, who is known and grasped to the degree that each one opens the gates of imagination, according to the capacity to attain the spirit of wisdom. As one fathoms in his mind, so he is known in his mind. So he is known in those gates. But can he be known accurately? No one has ever been able to grasp and know him. So ultimately, God is unknowable, but there's a sense in which the transcendent divinity can be known in the gates. In which she'arim, in which gates? The gates of imagination. Rabbi Yehuda is playing here on the verb l'sha'er, to estimate, to guess, to measure, to imagine. So the gates of imagination, the gates of our own imagination, enable us to get some sense of the divine reality, though of course it's an incomplete comprehension. That's Rabbi Yehuda's view, and now Rabbi Shimon, the master of the Zohar, the Botzina Kadisha, the holy lamp, he takes a different approach. Rabbi Yehuda has said God can be known through the gates of imagination. Rabbi Shimon gives a different meaning to the gates. Rabbi Shimon said, her husband is known in the gates. Who are the gates? As is said, lift up your heads, O gates. Be lifted up, openings of eternity. Through these gates, supernal rungs, the Blessed Holy One becomes known. Otherwise, no one could grasp. So what are these gates? As usual, the Zohar does not name the Sefirot and does not use the word Sefirot, but the Sefirot are the gates. So Rabbi Shimon was saying Ein Sof is known because of the Sefirot. Ein Sof cannot be known in and of itself. Ein Sof cannot be grasped in any total way, but through the Sefirot, through those divine gates, the reality of Ein Sof becomes known bit by bit. Through those rungs, the divine becomes known. Come and see. The human soul is unknowable except through smooth members of the body, rungs carrying out what the soul designs. So she is known and unknown. Similarly, the Blessed Holy One is known and unknown, for he is soul of soul, spirit of spirit, hidden and concealed from all. But through those gates, openings for soul, the Blessed Holy One becomes known. So God and the soul can be compared in some way. Both of them are unknowable in their essence. We can't really know the full essence of any human being, as we cannot know the essence of God. But we get a glimpse of the soul through the way a person acts, and we get a glimpse of Ein Sof through the Sefirot, through those gates. They're openings for soul, openings for our soul to discover the divine, and openings for the soul of soul, for Ein Sof, openings for Ein Sof to manifest itself to us. Come and see, there is opening within opening, rung upon rung, through which the glory of the Blessed Holy One becomes known. Opening of the tent, opening of righteousness. As is said, open for me gates of righteousness. This is the first opening to enter. Through this opening, all other supernal openings come into view. Whoever attains this attains all other openings. for all abide here. So each of the openings, each of the sfirot, provide us with some insight. Shekhinah is known as the opening of righteousness, tzedek. So pitchuli sha'arei tzedek, open for me the gates of righteousness. Once Shekhinah becomes available, once Shekhinah becomes accessible, then all the other sfirot reveal themselves through her. Now, when this opening is unknown, since Israel is in exile, all those openings have withdrawn from it. They cannot know or grasp. We are in a state of galut, and Shekhinah herself shares in the galut of Israel. So the other sfirot are now detached from Shekhinah. They can't flow freely into Shekhinah. They, meaning Israel, cannot know or grasp. We have no way to access the higher sfirot. However, when Israel will come forth from exile, all those supernal rungs are destined to alight upon it fittingly. Then the inhabitants of the world will discover precious supernal wisdom, previously unknown to them. As is written, the spirit of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh will alight upon him, a spirit of wisdom and understanding, a spirit of counsel and power, a spirit of knowledge and awe of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. All those are destined to alight upon this lower opening of the tent. All those are destined to alight upon King Messiah below, so he may judge the world. As is written, he will judge the poor with righteousness. Now the Sfirot are detached from Shekhinah, but at the time of redemption, at the time of Mashiach, and at any moment of fullness in our life, in our week, for example, on Shabbat, the other Sfirot reconnect with Shekhinah. The flow, the Shefa, cascades down the Sfirot and through Shekhinah to us, and then Shekhinah is available. So when Abraham was gladdened, when he was given the good news of the upcoming birth of Isaac, it was by this rung, it was by Shekhinah. Shekhinah delivered the news to Abraham and Sarah, as has been said. For it is written, he said, I will surely return to you when life is due. You recall that Abraham encounters 3 messengers, and the text in the Torah switches between the singular and the plural when it's describing those messengers. This particular verse has the singular, he said. Well, which one of the 3 messengers said this? Who delivered the news? He said, who it was is not recorded. It was opening of the tent. It was Shekhinah herself. She is the opening of the divine realm, and she delivered this news. So Sarah heard this rung speaking, which she had never heard before. As is written, V'Sarah shoma'at petach ha'ohel. We usually translate that, Sarah heard from the opening of the tent, but the Hebrew doesn't have that preposition from. The Hebrew just says, V'Sarah shoma'at petach ha'ohel. That enables Rabbi Shimon to translate it, Sarah heard the opening of the tent. Not from the opening of the tent, she actually heard Shekhinah. She heard Shekhinah, the opening of the tent, who was delivering the joyous news. I will surely return to you when life is due, and behold, your wife Sarah will have a son. A good example of how the Zohar reads the Torah hyper-literally, even more literally than the Pshat. Sarah actually heard Shekhinah. She had a direct experience of the divine. And it's passages like this that stimulate us to yearn for that direct connection with Shekhinah. I'm going to call now on Rabbi Eyal Rees, who is a rabbi in Tzfat and the director of the Tzfat Kabbalah Center, and he'll share with us some thoughts about Zohar. Please, Eyal. Eyal, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you. Do you hear me
Great.
now?
Wonderful. Fine. We see you and hear you.
Okay, great. So, Chodesh Tov, everyone. Good Chodesh from the holy city of Tzfat, city of the Kabbalah. What I want to share when I prepared some readings from the Zohar for this event tonight, I thought I should share and read something from the Idra Rabbah. Not long ago, we were learning here from the Idra Zuta, and for those who remember, in the Idra Zuta, there's a mention of the Idra Rabbah, of the gathering of the big assembly of the Idra Rabbah. And in the Idra Rabbah, in the opening, there's a mention of the Idra de Mashkena, the Idra of the dwelling. All the Idrot are connected. And I want to say that maybe even this gathering on Zoom tonight is also a sort of an Idra, of a gathering, of a meaningful Kabbalistic gathering of sharing, wisdom, inspiring, and may the cycle of students of the Zohar keep growing. And at my center, at our center in Tzfat, which is located right at the heart of the old city of Tzfat, the city of the Kabbalah, it is our honor and, to share with people the Pritzker edition, which is standing, it's been like maybe 5 years now, since Rabbi Popko has sent this to us from Chicago, and we have it and we share the availability, the existence, the content of this beautiful Zohar with so many thousands every year. It's really an honor and pleasure to take part in the widespread of the Zohar. To continue from where Professor Matt just stopped now, speaking about opening of the tent, I want to speak about opening in general. With the commentaries to the Zohar comment that the term Patach Rabbi Shimon, Patach Rabbi Abba, Patach Rabbi Yossi, Patach, whenever the sages of the Zohar open their discourses, like an opening for the heavenly wisdom to come down upon us. And there's a great opening, a very general opening, at the beginning of the Idra. And this is actually a teaching from the Holy Ari, Rabbi Isaac Lurie of Tzfat, brought down by some Hasidic masters. And it's related to the first word of the Idra Rabbah, the opening, the entering into the secrets of the Partzufim, the configurations of Arichanpin, Ze'eranpin, Malchut, Nukva. Starts the Idra Rabbah, and I'll read from inside. Tanya, that's the first word. The Holy Ari says, why does the Idra Rabbah begin with the word Tanya? Because Tanya is a word of opening. It's an opening of consciousness. It's actually a name of Klipa, of not such a positive, power. Klipa, as we know, it's like a evil spiritual power that rests on the hearts of Talmidei Chachamim, of lofty scholars of Torah, that prevents them from seeing and accessing, seeing the importance of the study of the inner dimension of the Torah, the soul of the Torah, the Kabbalah, and therefore, says the Holy Ari, this is why the Idra Rabbah begins with the word Tanya in order to break through this Klipa. Let's read from inside. Tanya, it has been taught. Rabbi Shimon said to their companions, how long will we sit on a single based pillar? For it is written, time to act for Hashem. They have violated your Torah. Days are few, and the creditor is pressing. A herald proclaims every day, but reapers of the field are few, and at the edges of the vineyard, not noticing or knowing properly where the place is. So therefore, continues the Zohar saying, gather companions at the threshing chamber, a translation and a beautiful translation of Beit Idra, threshing chamber, wearing coats of mail and lances. Arm yourselves with your equipment, says Rabbi Shimon. Prepare yourselves with counsel, that's keter, crown, wisdom, understanding, knowledge, all the sfirot, all the gates, all the openings. In your soul, be prepared for the revelation. Vision, hands and feet. Proclaim as your king the one who has power of life and death, so that you may decree words of truth to which holy ones of the highest These are the angels listen, which they delight to know and hear. Now comes the big drama. So beautiful. He sat down and wept. He's emotionally attached, emotionally involved. Zohar study, teaching, sharing of Kabbalah is with emotions. It's a moving act. He sat down and wept, Rabbi Shimon, and he said, woe if I reveal, woe if I do not reveal. What should I do? I want to reveal. I want to take this job, this task on myself. Maybe Professor Matt can relate to it. Should I translate the Zohar so to take this on myself? Is the time ready? Should I do it? You know, I want to do it. It's the time. It's a call. We got to do this thing. But sometimes it takes a little hesitation. What do I do? Says Rabbi Shimon. And then the Zohar continues. The companions who were there kept silent, muted like now. Rabbi Abba rose and said, if it pleases my master, behold what is written. The secret of Hashem is for those who revere him. And these companions revere the Blessed Holy One and have already entered the holy assembly of the dwelling, the Idra of the dwelling, which I mentioned before. Some of them entering and emerging. Entering and emerging, well, all commentaries explain that they all enter, but not all of them fully understand the deep, deep, deep secrets of the teachings of the Idra. But that's okay, you know, because as long as they understand something and they connect, some understand more, some understand even deeper, to a different level and so on, according to their measures, according to their estimate. Nodaba Sharim Bala, each person according to his measure, you know what? The message is, go for it. These are the words of Rabbi Abba, which led Rabbi Shimon to take the duty on himself and the responsibility of sharing even more the secrets of the Idra Rabbah. If I may, I would just like to add a word of blessing to all the students that are part of this Zoom Idra that are learning with us tonight at the Siyyum, that all of you and myself and all of us should continue learning and share more of the wisdom and beauty of the Zohar in English, in other languages, and may we all go from strength to strength. And thank you very much, Professor Daniel Matt, for allowing me to be part of this beautiful Idra tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Eyal. It's wonderful. And I look forward to visiting you again in Tzfat. And any of you, next time you get to Tzfat, please go say hi to Eyal at the center.
Thank you. All are welcome.
I'm going to call now on Arthur Green. I hope you're with us, Art, and that the audio and video are working. Art is a master, a really leading Jewish theologian, a great scholar of Hasidism, and a friend and teacher of mine for over 50 years now. He is really one who helped plan and initiate and guide this entire project of the Zohar Pritzker edition. And it's wonderful that he's able to join us today. And please, Art, I hope you can share some words with us.
Wonderful to be here with you, Danny, and with all of you, and to share this very special event. I envy you who have gone through the Zohar daf al daf, page after page, from beginning to end. I have never done that, and would still like to do it while I'm here. I'm thinking about should I start doing an Ammud a day as well? Maybe join you. Danny, you chose a wonderful passage to teach us now. I remember the day maybe 35 or 40 years ago when we found the Ketem Paz commentary on that particular passage, and how excited we were to read it. It was wonderful to see that, to hear it again from you.
Right.
The famous Hasidic master, Reb Pinchas of Koretz, said, I thank God that my soul came into the world after the Zohar was revealed, because the Zohar kept me a Jew. And I think I feel the same way about the Zohar and about the Hasidic masters themselves. The Zohar prevents a Judaism of a profundity that was unequaled before it. It took the raw materials of the religion it had created and put them into an entirely new key and gave to them a kind of depth that had never been revealed before. How did it do that? I want to say a little bit about how it did that. For me, I want to make two comments. This is the first of two comments. I want to say it did it by this marvelous creation of symbolic language. The Rambam had come along 100 years before the Zohar and had said, you can't say anything about God. There's nothing positive that you can say about God because God is utterly unknowable. The Rambam tried to purify the idea of God by stripping away every anthropomorphism and every anthropopathism, every false idea of God. And the Zohar understood that you have to do just the opposite. You have to accomplish the same thing, but just the opposite. Rather than saying what God is not, saying what God is, but God is everything. Yes, God is indeed a father and a king, but God is also a queen and a princess and a son and a daughter and a sun and a moon and a lake and a river and an ocean and a tree, and practically every other noun in Scripture can be turned into a symbol for some place within the divine realm. That dynamic unity of 10, when the one reveals itself to be 10, and then everything becomes a symbol for those 10, gives language. It creates a new language. The Zohar I hear the Zohar saying back to Maimonides, yes, you're right. In your language, that language of discursive prose, you really can't say anything about God because the language doesn't go deep enough to be able to talk about it. But here's a new language. Here's a new language that will take you to a new and deeper and more poetic, insightful place. And in that language, you can say everything about God. And everything you say is somehow about God. And it therefore opens, as that opening, patach, that opening, it opens the mind in a certain way to enter another level of consciousness by speaking that ever mysterious symbolic language. Of course, that language was being created for 100 years before the Zohar. There were Kabbalists already 80, 100 years before the Zohar, and they were beginning to use that symbolic language. I had one of my favorite novels I read many, many years ago, maybe 40 years ago, was a novel by the German novelist Hermann Hesse. It's called Magister Ludi, or The Bead Game. I reread it a few years ago just to see if I would still like it 40 years later, and I still do. He talks about a marvelous musical instrument that somebody invented, something like a great organ, but that organ contained within it all the music of the world and also these mathematical secrets and the order of creation. And to play that instrument was to play the wisdom of the entire world. And then one person came along after that instrument had already been invented, and he was Magister Ludi. He was the master of the game. He played that instrument with a beauty that nobody ever could have imagined. And I think the authors of the Zohar were like that. The game was there, the symbolic language was there, but they played it with a beauty and a freeness, a freedom, and a profundity that was absolutely unimaginable previously. Part of it was almost never using the conventional names of the Sfirot, always going from one symbol to another, and the symbols flowing together in this constant sense of flow, which is the flow of light or the flow of water or the flow of human seed, all of them symbolic of that same constant flowing process that creates and recreates existence in every moment. The Zohar is a magnificent work of poetry. I'm here in Israel and I'm spending a lot of time with Zohar scholars here, the circle of Zohar scholars here, the Chavraya. We call ourselves the Chavraya, and they all love Zohar. The tendency among scholars here, however, is to think of the Zohar largely as a literary work and to love the stories of the Zohar. And the stories are beautiful, the narrative is beautiful, but I love the drashot. I love the homilies of the Zohar, the teachings of the Zohar. And the teachings of the Zohar, because they give Judaism a different kind of profundity, a kind of symbolic profundity that it never had without them. So you gave us a beautiful example of it in that Nodab Sha'arim, and then Sarah Yeshevet Petach HaOhel, those are wonderful, wonderful examples of it. So thank you for sharing them. The other thing I want to say just briefly is that I love the Zohar because it's a book of love. There's so much love in the Zohar. First of all, Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, is present on almost every single page. If there's not a verse from the Song of Songs, there's an image from the Song of Songs, or a reference to a kind of relationship that's in the Song of Songs. The coming together of male and female union in the Zohar, and the lush gardens of the Song of Songs are somehow always there. It's as though the Zohar authors are walking through those lush gardens. Maybe they were gardens in medieval Castile, where gardening was invented as we know it. Maybe it was gardens of the imagination of the Shiur and Delibe. But the gardens of love are very beautiful. And that love of Kodesh Baruch Hu and Shekhinah, of the male and female within God, is parallel to the incredible love the Kabbalists have for one another. The number of times, Joel Hecker was here who wrote about this, but the number of times that they kiss one another and that they say, had I come into this world only to hear your beautiful words, it would have been enough. And that kissing and blessing and loving one another, at the same time they're speaking the words of love about God and the Shekhinah, just makes the Zohar a great book of love. So a book of depth and a book of love, and it has enriched my life for the last more than 50 years since our shared teacher. We should mention our shared teacher, Professor Alexander Altman, who taught us both Zohar originally. I was an undergraduate at Brandeis when Professor Altman came from England in 1960 and taught the first course in Zohar ever to be taught in an American university. I was a student in that class, and you took the same course a few years later. And we both owe our revered teacher a great debt. So I wanted to bring him in here too and share him with all your students, so that the names pass down through this wonderful chain of generations of learning. So a great Yishar Koach to you, the master of this game, Daniel, and to all of you who learn, and L'chumi Chayil Chayil, keep learning. Wonderful to be with you.
Thank you, Art. You've really deepened our understanding and appreciation of Zohar so many times, and so much of what you've written. I'm sure almost everyone here has read Art's introduction in volume 1 of the Zohar Pritzker edition. If any of you have not, then I just cannot recommend that highly enough. It's a wonderful opening for all of us. We're going to now hear really from someone who will make this a Siyyum. Joel Hecker is professor of Jewish mysticism at the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College in Philadelphia, and he is the author of volume 11 of the Zohar Pritzker edition and of volume 12 of the Zohar Pritzker edition, which we're concluding. He's going to share with us, he's going to teach us a passage from near the end of volume 12. So Joel, please.
Thank you, Danny. It's an honor to be able to participate today in this fantastic event, and it was a great privilege for me to have been brought on to this project, both by my two teachers, Art Green and Danny Matt, over 10 years ago. At a Siyyum, a ceremony of completion of a work of Torah, it's customary to read and teach about a passage from the end of the text whose completion is being celebrated. I'm going to read excerpts from the last complete story and homily in the Zohar, starting on page 688 in volume 12. The story is the longest story of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in the cave in the entire Zohar corpus, a fitting bookend for a brief mention of Rashbi in the cave that appears in the Zohar's introduction. I'm going to share my screen so people can follow along, or if you own volume 12, please turn to page 688. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read excerpts from this story and then offer comments afterward. Rabbi Shimon, son of Yochai, fled to the wilderness of Lida and hid in a cave. he and his son, Rabbi Elazar. A miracle occurred for them. A carob tree sprouted and a spring of water gushed forth. They ate from the carob tree and drank from the waters. Elijah of blessed memory visited them twice daily and taught them without anyone knowing about it. One day, the sages were in the Beit Midrash questioning and debating. The curses of Leviticus allude to the first temple, while the curses of Deuteronomy allude to the second temple. Curses of Leviticus contain promises in the Blessed Holy One's affection for Israel, as is written, I will remember my covenant with Jacob, and yet even this too, when they are even in the land of their enemies, I will not reject them. The curses of Deuteronomy contain no promises nor any consolation at all, such as are found in the first curses, and none of them could explain it. Rabbi Yehuda, son of Eli, rose, saying, Woe for the absence of son of Yochai. No one knows his whereabouts, and even if they did, they could not divulge. Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, rose one morning and saw birds flying, a turtle dove trailing them. He stood up saying, Turtle dove, faithful turtle dove, since the days of the flood, the form of the holy people has suited you and graced you. Go serve as my messenger to son of Yochai, wherever he is. The dove circled around and came before him. He wrote a note recording what he had said. The dove arose and took it in its mouth, traveling to Rabbi Shimon, under her wing. Rabbi Shimon looked at the note and cried, he along with his son, Rabbi Elazar. He said, I weep because of our separation from the companions, and I weep regarding these matters that have not been revealed to them. What will later generations do when they consider this? Just then, Elijah of blessed memory arrived. He saw him weeping and said, I was ready for a different mission, but the Blessed Holy One dispatched me to dry your tears. Oh, Rabbi, Rabbi, now is not the time to reveal these matters to the righteous, but here is what the Blessed Holy One explained. The first verses contain 32 verses, all corresponding to the paths of Torah. The latter curses contain 53 verses, corresponding to the parashot and roots of the Torah. In the first exile from the first temple, Israel passed along those concealed secret paths. Their sins were revealed and their end was revealed, along with consolation and promises for them. In the latter exile, after the second temple, the people of Israel transgressed against 53 portions, revealed paths. Their sins were concealed and their ends were concealed. Neither promises nor consolations were written. Just then, a wind gusted by, separating them, sweeping Elijah up in a wheel of fire. Rabbi Shimon remained weeping. He fell asleep at the opening of the cave. Suddenly, Elijah of blessed memory came saying, Arise, Rabbi Shimon, wake up from your slumber. Happy is your portion, for the Blessed Holy One is concerned for your honor. All the promises and consolations of Israel are written in these curses. And now I skip toward the end. After Rabbi Shimon has received the full explanation of the interpretative problem. And in this bottom paragraph, it says, in the evening, Rabbi Shimon wrote a note and placed it in the mouth of the turtle dove, which journeyed back to Rabbi Yossi, who had stayed put, his eyes expectant. Upon spotting the dove, he said, turtle dove, you are the most faithful bird in the skies. He proclaimed of it. The dove came back to him at eventide, and look, a plucked off olive leaf was in its bill. He took the note and went to the companions. He showed it to them, and they were astonished. Rabbi Yehuda wept, saying, Alas, even though we do not know his whereabouts, the place where the tree falls, there it will be. Where son of Yochai is found, his companions are there with him, awakened by him, learning from him. Happy is the soul of son of Yochai, for the Blessed Holy One has performed miracles with him. He is decreed, and the Blessed Holy One is fulfilled. In the future, he will be the head of the righteous ones who sit in the Garden of Eden. He will receive the face of Shekhinah and will see the Blessed Holy One. Delighting with the righteous ones, he will call to them, Come, let us bow down and kneel. Let us bend the knee before Yud, He, Vav, and He, our Maker. Okay. What fortuitous timing for us to be reading this story at this time, for it relates to a scene so much like our own. The master teacher has not been seen for ages, living in quarantine. Being in a cave, though, was probably worse than shelter at home or any version of lockdown that we're currently experiencing. His student, Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, is stumped by a problem understanding Parsha Kitavo, which is filled with a string of horrific curses if Israel does not maintain their side of the covenant. Unable to resolve the interpretive riddle, he sets up a Zoom call with his Rebbe, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Okay, it wasn't Zoom, it was a dove. Different technology, same idea, and the same experience. They're able to communicate, but it's still not the same. Rabbi Shimon weeps on account of the separation, and he weeps on account of the difficulty in the Torah. Tears change everything. Elijah arrives, sent by God miraculously to provide the solution to the riddle. In case you're wondering, getting a message from God is much better than finally getting through to technical support. The story draws toward a conclusion with Bar Yochai sending a note back to the companions explaining how redemption can come after the horrible curses described in Deuteronomy chapter 28. And the final paragraph opens, Rabbi Yehuda wept, saying, alas, even though we do not know his whereabouts, where Bar Yochai is found, his companions are there with him, awakened by him, learning from him. Here we are, close to 2,000 years after Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai has died. And even if he is not the author of the Zohar, we stand in a chain of Jews and other seekers who look at the Zohar, written mostly 700 years ago, as the children of Bar Yochai. When we sit in a Zoom class, we mourn the absence of presence, the absence of our teacher's presence, the absence of our students' presence. The words put into the mouth of Rabbi Yehuda that wherever Bar Yochai is, his students are there with him, hint at the author's self-awareness, that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai perhaps can be summoned even in absence. In other words, even in absence, through longing, we can experience presence. Indeed, perhaps the only way in which presence can truly be initiated is through the presence that is intimated by absence. In the daily liturgy, we recite a verse from Psalms 30, when you hid your face, I was stricken. When we feel that God has turned away, that's what's most frightening. Indeed, the Baal Shem Tov has taught about this verse that more terrifying than God's apparent absence is our lack of understanding that God is hiding. But Psalm 30 guides the reader to be optimistic, somehow knowing that if we turn towards God, divine presence will arise from the absence. I skipped several pages of the translation in this story, and not only because of time constraints, rather because the Zohar there offers the kind of theodicy, an explanation for suffering, that's no longer palatable. While some religious explanations for suffering have been long-lasting, others no longer work. But I don't want to ignore the fact that the pages that I skipped were about suffering, because as we, especially in the US, are so keenly aware, we are living in the midst of at least two crises. First, a global pandemic, and the second, a renewed awareness of the systemic racism and inequality in our country. I won't substitute a modern theodicy for these two different sufferings, but recall that Rav Yosef Dov Ber Soloveitchik taught that the key is not to explain suffering, but to choose how to respond. To the crisis of the pandemic, we know what to do. Wash your hands, wear masks, practice social distancing. For the second, there's much hard work of self-examination and social and political change to be effected. But here too, we must summon the memory of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who was a political radical. At this moment, I'll leave the particular recommendations for political action to colleagues who are seasoned activists. But as I draw toward my conclusion, I want to return to the question of absence and presence. We today are experiencing God's absence in many ways: lack of love, lack of justice, and even, God forbid, in rising death around us. But the Zohar, more than stressing God's absence, and more than stressing God's nothingness, stresses God's presence. And to get a sense of that promise, I want to draw our attention to the very first page of the Pritzker Zohar, to the very first page of the introduction to the Zohar, because what one always does after a siyum is one goes right back to the beginning and starts again. The homily there begins by talking about the rose from the Song of Songs, a cycle of love poems, showing how it is a symbol for creation, redemption, the Jewish people, and ultimately for the Shekhinah, feminine presence of divinity. We are instructed there to hold the rose, now a cup of blessing, with our 5 strong fingers, like the 5 leaves that support the rose. What is this passage teaching us? Nothing less than to take responsibility for how holiness, righteousness, and even divinity come to be present in the world. Inverting the gospel hymnal, "He's got the whole world in his hands," the Zohar is teaching we have Shekhinah, God's own self, in our hands. Let's take that responsibility seriously, with forethought and with love. L'chaim.
Chaim.
Thank you. Thank you, Joel, so much. Thank you for opening that passage and enriching it for us. What you said and what a few people have said reminds me of something that I learned from Art many years ago when the Zohar says Rabbi Yehuda Patach, Rabbi Shimon Patach, and Ayal alluded to this. Part of what's going on there is Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda is opening up the verse. You think the verse means this? Look at what it could mean. Come and see. Tachazeh. And that the Zohar just does for us endlessly every time we open a page. I think a number of people have been inspired to continue with the second cycle, and people who have not had a chance to study Zohar in great depth may want to begin the second cycle on Tuesday. Anyone who wants to join the group, it's very simple. Just go to the Facebook page, The Zohar, and you'll see there the information. We're going to conclude with the traditional prayer of Hadaran, with a slightly different wording, and open it here. This is the prayer. I think this time I'll ask just that the presenters read this out loud. It's a little chaotic for with the audio of everyone. Please follow along in the Aramaic here. And those who presented today, please join me. Just say at first, this word Hadaran, there's some controversy about what it actually means. It's often translated, we will return to you. Actually, the Aramaic is we have returned, but probably its more accurate meaning is from the Hebrew Hadar, splendor. So that what it really means is our splendor is upon you, and your splendor is upon us.
Really?
There's an interaction between the student and the text, and really enriching and stimulating one another. Let's read this together, and that's how we'll conclude. Hadaran Allah, Sefer HaZohar. Hadaran Allah, Da'atan Allah, Sefer HaZohar. Da'atan Allah, Vatitche Minah, Sefer HaZohar. Vatitche Minah, La Ba'al Mahaden, La Ba'al Ma'ada'ate, Da'ate Tadir, Our splendor is upon you, Sefer HaZohar, and your splendor is upon us. We will return to you, Sefer HaZohar. You will return to us. Our awareness is on you, Sefer HaZohar, and your awareness is on us. We will not be forgotten by you, Sefer HaZohar, nor will you be forgotten by us, neither in this world nor in the world that is coming,
or in the world that is coming
constantly,
ceaselessly.
The very conclusion there is, of course, a little addition based on a passage near the end of the Zohar and the Idrazuta, Alma Da'ate, the world to come. It's usually translated the world to come. But for the Zohar, it really means the world that is coming. And the Aramaic and the Hebrew Olam Haba can certainly mean that, the world that is coming. Not that it will someday come. That dimension of reality, specifically the Sphira of Bina, is coming, is flowing, and we can taste that, we can experience that by slowing down our normal mental activity and communing with the divine within and beyond. We'll conclude with this other additional line. V'yitkayem banu hakatuv v'hamaskilim yaziru Zohar harakia matzikei harabim hakochavim olam va'ed. The verse that really gave the name Zohar to the Zohar, may this verse be fulfilled in us. The enlightened will shine like the Zohar,
Zohar,
radiant
radiance of the
sky.
sky.
And those who
Those
guide
who guide the many to be
righteous
righteous,
like the
like
stars
stars,
forever.
forever and ever.
Amen.
Mazel tov, yasher koach. Thank
Mazal
all
tov.
of you for
Mazel
joining
tov.
us. May we continue to study Torah, to explore the mystical dimension of Torah,
Amen.
and Chodesh Tov.
Chodesh tov.
Toda. Thank you. Mazal
Tov.
tov. all.
Mazal
Vakasha.
tov.
Zaka Baruch to
Vakasha.
all the presenters.
Thank you.
Tov.
Thank you.
Good, you're welcome. Everyone be well. Shalom.